Welcome everybody to another Zoom call. Um, just a reminder, the only thing that's really new in the last few weeks is that you can self-schedule any follow-up calls. And if it's a follow-up call, when you get to this screen, this is on our website and on your member site. It's all over. So if you see this and you click on the self-schedule, um, you'll have the choice to schedule a Zoom call if you're going to go over. The only time you would do that is to go over labs. Let's say if you were going to go over labs that you sent me or you had done. Sometimes it's better to do it in a Zoom call so that I can share my screen. And then always make sure you fill out the follow-up coaching call info sheet. All right, first question. Here's some new imaging technology I just heard about on the Breast Cancer Summit. Sounds fantastic. I haven't had time to research it yet, and its usefulness in detecting metabolic activity, or if it's just a screening tool that's much safer than a mammogram. But here's the website so others can get started on their own research if desired. If you've heard of it, please share what you've discovered. Well, what it is, I should have done a screenshot of the website so you can see it, but everybody can go to the website. It's a new ultrasound machine where you lay on a table and your breast kind of sags into this space so you get really a better three-dimensional picture of what's going on in your breast. So it wouldn't be, it's not a tool to detect metabolic activity like a PET scan, but it's a safe, less invasive than um, a mammogram or a CT scan or a PET scan, um, uh, or an MRI even, and it gives you just a really nice three-dimensional picture of a mass. So if there is a lesion, a mass of any kind, you could get a better picture of and measurement of it, so you know if it's growing or not growing. That's really the benefit of this tool. Now it's going to be years before it's really widely available. That's just the way things move because I'm sure it's, a couple $100,000 piece of equipment that hospitals would have to add. If they don't see the financial benefit from it, it's going to be slow to add these things. So, but it's a great tool. It's neat that there is some innovation because there hasn't been a whole lot of innovation in imaging for a very long time. Without going into too much explanation, I transferred some DMSO into a dropper bottle for easy application. Once in a while, I get that bottle mixed up with my homeopathic drops, and I put a few drops of the DMSO in my mouth by mistake. Naturally, I spit it out promptly since it tastes like liquid. You know what? Must be the sulfur. But just how stupid or dangerous is this on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is don't worry about it, and 10 is it's perfectly fine to take orally. And then 10 is that you have to take measures to ensure it never happens again, and you're lucky you didn't die. There isn't really any harm in that at all. DMSO has the capability of absorbing very quickly. That's why it has benefits to use it topically. And the sulfur in it, because it's dimethyl sulfoxide, what the sulfur does is works as an anti-inflammatory. That's why, initially when DMSO was created, it was beneficial for like knee inflammation or, pain in your hands and, like an inflammatory pain due to like an inflammatory arthritis or something. And it can help bring down that pain. The negative is that the positive is it absorbs really quickly and it can help decrease that pain and by decreasing the inflammation. The negative is that it absorbs really quickly and it gets into your bloodstream really quickly. And the reason why it kind of fell off the map of using it for inflammatory processes is because people tended to overuse it because it worked well. But then that sulfur, you get a lot of sulfur in your bloodstream and you actually can taste it. So you can taste that garlicky taste when you overuse DMSO. And people didn't like that. Can it have any dangerous effects on the body? The only time it can have a dangerous effect when you have different defects that you tend to not be able to process sulfur very well. It's a few people, it's not very common, and those are the people that don't do well with eating garlic or don't do well with eating onions, because those are also sulfur compounds. Now, most people are healthier eating onions and healthier getting more sulfur in, but not everybody. Some people don't get rid of that very well. But um, on a scale of 1 to 10, as far as danger and putting a few drops on your mouth, it's would be a 0. It's not dangerous whatsoever. Um, you are getting it into your bloodstream when you put it on your skin because it's absorbing so quickly. There's no danger, of course, anything has some sort of lethal dose. If you took the whole drop or bottle of it, probably still wouldn't be even close to anything like that. But it does taste horrible, and that's one of the reasons why it kind of fell out of favor in using it topically. Though it can have some great benefits. I mean, you've heard of using MSM, which is which is a supplement that's a powder. It's not a liquid. And MSM supplements can be extremely beneficial for people for inflammatory issues. But again, same thing. It's a sulfur-based compound, and if you take too much of that, you can get kind of that garlicky taste. You have to take a lot of the MSM to get that, but it's an anti-inflammatory. It's nothing. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt your mouth. You recommended a healthy mouth blend in my updated protocol. I noticed that it does contain some mint oils. I'm supposed to not have mint within an hour of my homeopathic drops. Is there enough mint in this product that I need to make sure that I leave an hour between brushing with this and taking my homeopathic drops? The answer is yes. Yes, there is. That same thing with any other toothpaste too. If you have a mint flavored toothpaste, remember you should not be using any homeopath within about an hour of that. So mint, spearmint, peppermint can negate the effects of homeopathic drops. So you don't want to be doing mint lozenges. You don't want to be doing mint toothpaste within about 30 to 60 minutes of taking a homeopath. So just be careful of that. Has anyone had any success taking oral B17 or amygdalin, possibly in high doses? I should have pulled up a picture of this. We have a number of people that tested well for B17. We use the Apricot Power brand B17. It comes in two formulas. One is a 500 milligram per capsule formula, and one is a 100 milligram per capsule formula. Now, high doses depends on how you define that. Typically, you depends on your weight, but let's say your body weight is 125 pounds. The maximum dose you'd really go is, and you'd have to work up to this dose, it would be probably 3 to 4 500 milligram capsules per day. Now, I know there's some clinics that go much higher than that, but they typically do that for a shorter period of time. Um, some people don't tolerate super high doses of B17. So I always suggest you start slow with a lower dose to begin with and then work up. Um, we've had one person, and it was actually a staff person a number of years ago that took nine or 10 of them at one time. I have no idea why. And they got a really bad headache and they felt sick and had to lay down and flush them with water. And took about 3 hours to pass, so they felt better. Um, but they learned a lesson not to overdose on that. It's very powerful, and it it can, it can make you sick too. So you have to just be careful with your dosage so you're not overdosing on that. So now I'm done with the mastectomy and the reconstructive surgeries. I want to focus on making sure that there's no reoccurrence. In what order do I complete these? Order a complete wellness panel, order cheek swab testing, do a one-on-one consult with you. I would do it in probably that order that you wrote that. I would get this going right away, order this, get this blood test done. Same time you can send in the cheek swab sample right away. And then after we do the cheek swab testing, unless there's things that you want to discuss before we test and put a whole new protocol together for you, you could wait until you get that protocol back from me and then schedule with a one-on-one. So it really has to do with, you know, the purpose of this one-on-one. If you want to talk about it before, some people are like, I really want to, change my whole protocol, cut way back, or maybe have financial concerns, or maybe they just want to change their life. They don't want to take as many supplements anymore, or, whatever it is, then I could be a little bit more choosy. But of course, you could write that on, any specifics on your cheek swab testing form for me to know that too, and then wait till you get that back until you might formulate some more questions to do a one-on-one consult. And remember you can just schedule that yourself right on that page on the member site or on our self-scheduling page on our regular website as well. That was the only questions we had come in. We didn't have a lot of questions that came in. So this is going to be a short meeting unless you guys have some more questions. Can we measure the amount of glutamate in the blood? No, you can't. So remember, there's a difference between glutamate and glutamine. So glutamine is the amino acid. It converts to glutamate. It doesn't just convert to glutamate. Glutamine, just like any other amino acid, is used to build proteins in your body. You need to eat proteins in order for your body to break them down through the digestive process so that you can then absorb the amino acids so that your body can use those amino acids to make different proteins and enzymes. So an enzyme is actually a protein. So you need amino acids in order to make those. So you eat protein in order to, obtain amino acids so that you can make proteins. Now you use them to make other things too. Glutamine is an amino acid that is also converted to glutamate on the GAD genetic pathways, through the GAD pathways. So if a person has some defects in those GAD pathways, they tend to convert glutamine to glutamate more readily. And and then and it can that be a problem? It can be with some people. So glutamate is not a feeder of cancer. Glutamate doesn't is not a factor in the cancer picture whatsoever. But glutamate is a factor in other things. Glutamate as a neurotransmitter functions as an excitatory neurotransmitter, and in the brain, it can lead to emotional issues. So people with OCD issues, people that tend to get fixated on something and can't get off of it, people with anxiety issues have excess amounts of glutamate in the blood. Now, again, why would a person have excess amounts of glutamate in the blood and in the brain? Well, it's that they may have that genetic defect on the GAD genes and they make too much glutamate. and they don't get rid of glutamates very quickly. Um, or they may consume glutamates in themselves, not glutamine, but glutamate. So where would you get glutamates? Well, our food industry purposely puts glutamates in food because it's an excitatory neurotransmitter. So that's the science of food. So they purposely use glutamates, like monosodium glutamate, in order to excite your brain when you eat that. So when your tongue encounters MSG, which is a glutamate, monosodium glutamate, it fires an excitatory response to the brain. It makes you think that that food tastes better. Remember, taste is completely a function of receptors on your tongue that are firing back to your brain. So that's why you can learn to like the taste of something over time. It's really a function of your brain. So but when you have glutamate on your tongue, it's going to fire an excitatory response to your brain, and it's going to wake up your brain and be like this like little firecracker in your brain. And you're going to go, oh, that's good. That tastes good. And you're going to want more of that food, and you're going to buy more of that food. That's why you'll be addicted to eating Doritos, and you buy them all the time because they have monosodium glutamates in there. Now that damages your brain when you're constantly exciting your brain because of eating too many glutamates or having defects where you just produce more glutamates. It can damage your brain. It can damage those neural pathways in your brain and basically burn them out. That's the problem with monosodium glutamate. It can lead to damages in your brain and inflammatory processes in your brain and microglial priming and antibody production of neural antibodies and autoimmune issues in the brain. So, but glutamates really don't tie in to cancer. Um, Glutamine ties into cancer because it can be a driver, it can be a fuel source for a cell metabolic process, but not so much glutamates. What do you recommend for carbohydrates daily intake with cancer patients? Um, so you don't, I wouldn't, there are like Atkins diets where you're really measuring your grams of carbohydrates on a daily basis, and you're trying to get those grams of carbohydrates down. Um, and I guess you can do that if you want. Um, the I would much rather have you just, if you want to do that, I would much rather have you look at grams of sugar and measure that, or better yet, maybe because it's actually how your body uses carbohydrates that's really important, is to measure blood glucose. So get a glucometer. Um, so getting a glucometer and testing your blood glucose in a fasting state. So you're tested in the morning before you eat anything. You haven't eaten anything all night long. You're in a 10 or 12-hour fast and you do a finger prick and you measure your glucose. The goal for a cancer patient is you really want to get that into the 70s. Now, I've stated multiple times that sometimes that's really hard to do, but I have on the members homepage, I have a monitoring sheet PDF that you can download and you can keep track of your glucose levels that way if you get yourself a glucometer. And I have some information written about that will explain it even more. So instead of looking at daily carbohydrate intake, I'd rather have you more focus on getting your glucose levels down because carbohydrates are split into simple and complex carbohydrates, and it's actually a sliding scale. And then it gets even more confusing because there's what's called a glycemic index on how fast things actually break down into sugar. And we've often said that you don't want to eat like potatoes and rice because it breaks down to sugar more. But if you cook potatoes and you put them in the refrigerator already cooked, it becomes a more stable carbohydrate. And then you eat it the next day, the glycemic index is much better and it does not break down into sugar quite as fast. So it gets complicated with how you break it down. Also gets complicated in supplements that you're taking. If you're taking berberine, it can help reduce blood sugar levels and help reduce that glycemic load on your and prevent glucose from being too available to be used as a cancer fuel too. So there's different nutritional things that make that difference too. And it's even more complicated because if you're eating even sugar with a protein and with a fat, then you tend not to break that sugar down quite as quickly, and you might not absorb as much, and you might have a less effect on your blood glucose level. Because it's really all about not just what you take in, but it's how it affects the cells. So it's really what's circulating in your blood. So measuring your blood glucose is a better way to look at that. I noticed the sedimentation rate is not an item on the blood work you have compiled at RUMA. I know that is a blood test that Nasha Winters recommends for surveillance. Is that important to track? Um, yeah, there are a couple other things that I do want to add to that test that I haven't done yet, and that is one of them. Is that really important to track? Not necessarily. I mean, every blood test has a level of importance to track with that. That has to do with anemia issues. Um, and I may add that to that test. So if you want to wait a couple of days before you order that, maybe I'll get that done tomorrow. I know you've addressed celery juice before. My teen son who struggles with acne and I began have began last week, I assume, taking it. One time I used well-washed, non-organic celery, and within an hour he was very exhausted and I became extremely dizzy. Neither of us had anything else. The dizziness is better but not gone, and I have extreme brain fog memory issues as well. Would you think this is a reaction to metals or pesticides or something else in that celery? If not, then what? If so, what should we do? Also, are you aware if celery juice has been effective for cancer, acne, or other morbidities that it is claimed to help? So, yeah, it's really hard to say that, um, your symptoms were a direct result of drinking that celery juice, and it could have been something in that. A clue gives us that both you and your son may have felt similar after drinking it. That gives you a clue that it's, a greater possibility that that was it. What could have possibly been in a non-organic celery juice that it could have caused problems? Um, I don't know that I have to look at the recent Dirty Dozen list if celery is often sprayed. As a gardener, I'm trying to think why you would spray celery with a pesticide because I don't think, there's very many pests um that bother celery. However, definitely if it's not organic, they used different fertilizers um to make it grow. Celery is not a super fast growing vegetable. So yeah, it's really hard to know what could have caused that. It could literally you could have become dizzy or exhausted if that was the only thing you drank, like you were on some sort of celery juice fast or something, and that's the only thing that you drank. Um, So Chrissy said celery is on the dirty dozen list. So yeah, anything is possible. If it's uh, it was sprayed with Roundup or something like that, if it's on the Dirty Dozen list, that's most of the things on the Dirty Dozen list were sprayed with pesticides like that and herbicides, then certainly an herbicide can cause issues like that. Anything that crosses the blood-brain barrier could cause inflammation in the brain. If it gets worse, is that if you already have a history of brain inflammatory issues, meaning you had concussions in the past, you already have known um, other things that have caused symptoms, brain upper motor neuron type symptoms, that would give you clues that you probably already know that you have some primed microglial cells. Or worse, if you have done a Cyrex Array 7X, which measures antibodies for neural tissue, and you had any positives on that, um, then then anything that could cause inflammation in the brain is going to make that worse. So, and it's going to take it can take weeks for that to calm back down. How do you help calm that down? If that's the scenario, then you have to use flavonoids that we've talked about, multiple times. Go back and watch the video called neuroinflammation. It's on the blog. If you just search neuroinflammation on the blog, you'll see it's about a half-hour video that explains microglial priming and the things that you'd want to do for that. Um, Certainly people that are more sensitive. Why doesn't everybody on the, I know people that never eat organic foods. Well, they might not be as sensitive to these pesticides and things like that. They may have an intact blood-brain barrier. Um, or they, have symptoms of dizziness and lightheadedness, and that's just normal for them. So they never think about it. I don't know. There's all sorts of reasons for that. But certainly, if you have a damaged blood-brain barrier and you're exposed to things like that, they're going to cross that barrier. Keto Mojo sells a monitor that measures both glucose and ketones, then will track automatically in their app. Monitor's about $45, I think. App is free. Um, yeah, you can track ketones as well, and we're talking back about tracking carbohydrates and using a glucometer to track glucose. Um, you have to look at the cost of the strips because usually the ketone monitors, the strips cost a little bit more. And it just depends on what you want to invest in that. So I just checked 2023 list, not on either Dirty Dozen or Clean 15. So if it's not on the Clean 15, then you know that it is sprayed with something, even though it might not be heavily sprayed with something. Um, Thank you guys for doing that work. I had 6 ultrasound panels done on swollen lymph nodes in my groins, armpits, and neck looking for residual cancer last week. The scans came back as oversized nodes in groins, but the conclusion was benign in all. Well, praise God for that. The oncologists want to biopsy the nodes in the groin and the armpits. If not cancerous, the oncologist wants to do surgery on my neck and remove the lymph nodes as a precaution and to test them. What are your thoughts? Well, in one sense, I would agree with your oncologist that, well, we don't know until we get a complete pathology report. Maybe we take the tissue out and smear it onto a slide and look for cancer cells. There could be cancer cells there. Well, I know, but what are we gonna do? Just remove all your organs to do that same thing? I mean, you have to draw the line somewhere on how invasive you want to get. So, if non-invasive tests show a low possibility of cancerous tumors there, then I would be inclined to just say, okay, let's not to get too cut happy. These are your lymph nodes. They can be so lymph nodes can enlarge when you're dealing with an infection. Lymph nodes can enlarge when you're dealing with a lot of toxins. Lymph nodes can enlarge when you're dealing with a lot of things that are going through them. So what goes through the lymph nodes? Anything that's cleared out of the tissues upstream from that lymph node. So things don't get cleared out of the tissues magically. They have to go through your open-ended lymph capillaries. So your lymph vessels pick up fluid and waste in the tissues, and it drains down back to your venous system, which then goes through eventually the liver again, and it's detoxified through the liver detox pathways. So that's how we get toxins out of our tissues, whether those toxins are from things that we're exposed to topically, or whether things that get dumped from the bloodstream that we ingested, or from surgical procedures that were distal to that lymph node, chemicals that, chemical procedures like chemotherapy that have to go through that, all those kind of things. So um, I mean, it's up to you. I know there's a lot of people in the world that they just will just do everything that their oncologist says because they think that's the best chance of survival. So they'll just go and have all those things removed. And um, some people I'm not saying some people don't have good results with that, but there's a lot of people that have bad results at that too. I think you do have to make the decision to draw your line and have some sense of conservativeness in allowing, the next procedures. The nodes in my neck where the tumors were have much calcification. Can you explain why and what this is? So calcification of lymph nodes um, can be just the nodal tissue uptaking minerals and calcium because of a protective measure of some sort, um, and becoming overly toxic because they've been filtering too many toxins. I don't fully understand the physiology of that. I'd have to look that up. Is there danger with doing biopsies only? They said they would be small needles. Well, there's danger in doing anything, but is that less invasive, obviously, than going and surgically removing it to test it and go, oh, I guess it was all nice and clean. Well, now that we surgically removed it, you can't put it back. So, um, yeah, it would be much less invasive. You talk about your invasiveness. One is doing nothing, and one is um, next is doing nothing but getting it tested on a regular basis. And next would be maybe doing a biopsy and going from there. So, these are tough decisions when you're pushed in one direction. So, um, and you feel a lot of pressure in your decision making process, but you just gotta stand your ground and go, okay, I want to be wise about this and try to make the best decision. I'm not gonna just follow one person's advice. Biopsy would be in the groin, and the armpit surgically would be in the neck. My original plan included a low histamine diet, and then my genetics came back that I had an issue with the genes associated with histamines. I have been on a histamine scavenger product as a result. I wasn't given a DAO supplement though. So does that mean I have the DAO enzymes? So why would I have histamine issues? So you have several gene families for histamines. You have the DAO gene families and you have the HNMT gene families. And actually, there was more recently discovered another gene family. I can't remember the name of it. They have to do with histamines. DAO gene family was the first one discovered, and that makes the DAO gene or DAO enzyme, the diamine oxidase enzyme that breaks down histamine. Now, that is made only in the gut. So you use, if you took a DAO supplement, so you could actually take DAO, that's our HistaClear supplement, is the DAO enzyme. Now, if you take that, that's not something you absorb. That enzyme stays in your gut. Um, and that so it will, so a person that would take the DAO enzyme is a person who has this horrible inflammatory process going on in the intestinal tract. And they'll take that to calm that down for a period of time. Another group that might take that are people that know that they react to foods that have histamines in it, but they're taken as a precautionary measure because they're going out or they're going to eat that food. Some people react to have a huge histamine reaction to alcohol per se, but they're going out to a party and they know they're gonna drink that, gin and tonics, and they don't want to have this huge histamine reaction, so they take several DAO enzymes before they drink the alcohol or before they eat that food. DAO enzymes do not get rid of histamines in the tissues. It only would get rid of histamines that are produced in the gut or that are consumed by the person and then have this inflammatory response in the gut. So we don't recommend DAO enzymes typically to a person with cancer. You're trying to get rid of the histamines in the tissues. That is the HNMT gene. So even if you have a lot of defects in the DAO enzyme or DAO genes, doesn't mean you should take that enzyme. It's a pretty expensive product too, so I don't really recommend it that often. Um, Histamine scavenger is a combination of different nutrients that help get rid of histamines in the tissues. So, and those are gotten rid of through the HNMT gene, not the DAO genes. So that's the difference with that. Trying to get rid of histamines in the tissue, you take histamine scavenger, you take clear hist, uh, or quercetin type products, different things that will get rid of histamine response in the tissues themselves. When do you post Zoom recordings? Usually it gets posted within minutes. It takes a few minutes to download the recording and then to upload it into YouTube. So it's just as fast as it takes to do that. I did check EWG before using the regular salary, but didn't find it. I thought I've read that if it's on either list, it's somewhere in between, possibly safe. Yes, that's correct. In the salary juice book, it says regular is fine if washed well. I wouldn't dare do it again. And remember too that, um, remember these fields that might be sprayed. Um, it's a tractor driving down the field, and they have this great big apparatus in the back that is sprayed. And then they turn a corner at the end of the field, and you think the product at those quarters probably get like 4 times the dose, when they don't turn off the sprayer to turn the corner. You know what I mean? It could be some weird like that you just got a stalk of celery that was, infested, if that's the right terminology, with some sort of toxin. And if you went to the same store and bought another stock the next day, if they had gone through it that fast, it could be completely a different dose. I mean, there's no way that unless you have your own organic chemistry lab that you're going to be able to test, each piece of food that you're going to, cook for your family, um, to see the doses of glyphosate or whatever you're looking for in that. So you're kind of hit and miss. And the truth is you could be exposed to this stuff with organic stuff. There's cross contamination. Sometimes these fields aren't very far apart that they're contaminated with. Or it could be something completely different that it was contaminated with. Who knows? Or it could not, maybe not even be the celery itself. So, there's another thing too. You can actually have antibodies to celery. So running the array Cyrex array 10, I've had people that have antibodies to celery. So they're going to have an inflammatory response by eating celery, whether it's organic or non-organic. So that's a possibility. Or you could just had, an inflammatory response because of something else that was going on in your gut. There's a lot of possibilities. Um, we don't want to completely jump to the conclusion that we were talking about, so we just don't know everything. Um, uh, as far as the benefits of celery juice, yeah, there can be benefits to juicing different vegetables. Uh, but just be careful going on a specific diet that's restricting other foods and other nutrients too. You're better off getting as many different foods and food groups in your system as possible. That's going to be the best thing to support your gut biome and the rest of your biome, is to have a variety of different foods. So I've been told binders should not be taken closer than 2 hours on either end of other supplements. Do you agree? Yeah, I think you should be taking binders on a relatively empty stomach. Okay, with that, I think we're going to close tonight. Thanks for being on. And know that we're all praying for you and hope that you're praying for each other as well. Um, and if you do need any follow-up contacts, um, make sure you just make an appointment. All right. Bye-bye.